have decided to share our first presentation today, and just the story before the story, how this all began. Actually, 2 years ago, I spent my summer vacation on the island of Amrum, which is a very small piece of sand in the Nordic Sea. And like always on vacation, I had a big bunch of books in my suitcase. And among those books was this little novel here by Bruce Sterling called Zeitgeist. It's an English novel, but the title sounds German. It has some brilliant thoughts. And I read this book in a time where we discussed the positioning of our university. And we talked about an interpretative approach, about a culturalistic approach. We talked about constructivism. And this novel contains some very interesting constructivistic thoughts. And being here a professor whose main topic is strategic leadership, it is very interesting for me how to guide organizations through a changing world. And this means that we have to anticipate change on one hand, and on the other hand, we have to set the organizations in the position to act, for example, to get into a change process. And reading that book, I thought, damn, the whole world is language. And we, people from the business community, from the business research community, we don't speak about words, we talk about numbers. And then I came back from a vacation, and Andreas and I were sharing our office, and then we started to talk, and he, as I said, has a linguistic background, and I have been interested in early recognition, strategic opportunity management for years, and I already wrote some papers in the very early 90s. And the big idea of that time was to put early recognition into an SAP system. The problem is the numbers in the SAP system and all the information I have, these are always views in the rear mirror. Like in your car, you look into the rear mirror, and the idea of this system is to turn the rear mirror to the front and project what you have seen on the street, and this won't work. So because all the algorithms and all the numbers you have are based on past experience, but nobody can tell you if these algorithms are valid in the future. And when the world is changing, many of these algorithms won't work in the future. And so all these algorithmic rule-based approaches, all these ideas to put early recognition in SAP, in ERP systems, they failed. As a fact, there is no truth or falsehood, just there are dominant processes by which reality is socially constructed. In a world of language, nothing else is even possible. And also the numbers are language. And those numbers are interpreted. And they are interpreted different by for example, a shareholder, by an investment company, by the CEO of a company, by the CFO of a company, and even by the white or blue collar workers in the organization. These are all different interpretations. And so the guiding question is early recognition a question of the recognition process itself, so the physical process, so to say, or more an issue of social discourse, of communication, of interpretation? Or is recognition the art of creating new interpretations of the things that are happening in our society, outside of the markets, and so on? And now Andreas will continue our presentation.
Thank you very much, Lutz. The most awful thing that can happen to a linguist is sharing office with a teacher of strategic management. Because one day he's going to ask you, how does language function? How does it work? I have been in Amrum this summer and I have read a book and it's talking about language and its function and how it works. So how does it work? And all the answers that a linguist can give to a teacher of strategic management would not satisfy him. So you would have to search for new answers. You have to rediscover what language is and how it works in the world of management. Narrative, and this is the most known short definition, is a story among others which taken together represent the multiple alternatives of action in face of a specific problem of the society. It's an anthropological definition of what story is. If a society has to deal with certain problems, and in the anthropological literature you would be told that there's only a limited number of problems that a society actually has. So the limited number of problems a society has means you're living, one day you will be dying, you will get married, you will have children, and so on and so on. You have to earn your income to survive. And so the number of problems that you actually have, that we have, is limited, and the society makes a decision of which solutions are the most apt or the most common, the most preferred for dealing with these problems. This is a perspective on culture, you know, which has been described by Kluckhohn and Strothbeck and their very early research on how cultures are built. So narrative is a story, and the story explains how culture works and how our social relationships work. At the same time, and this is a more philosophical approach, narrative is a reservoir of collectively shared meanings which represent the accessible portions of knowledge in society. Which means narrative is always there, and we are part of the narrative. We are the figures, we are the protagonists of the narrative. We are shared, and here in this room we are sharing a European or more than a European narrative, because Kinuyu joined us yesterday from Japan. But still, our collective meaning is a narrative. Our culture is narrative. And this a little bit more philosophical definition of the term makes it a rather abstract thing. And actually, there's a discussion since 15 or 20 years coming up of if not science as well is part of the narrative. Numbers have to be told. The numbers are a part of the story that is told. For example, consultants work perfectly with just telling numbers and giving numbers a sense. Science is part of the narrative. And this is a position which is relatively new, the auto-reflect of science towards itself. And it's a part of discourse analysis, it is a part of critical studies of scientific approaches towards knowledge and scientific development. So this is the one definition of narrative in a more collective sense. Narrative as a story, as I already said, is a definition which is better known in the community, both in the scientific community as in the public community. Stories are easy to handle too, to explain the nature of an identity and its surroundings. This means we are always narrating things to explain what we do and what we are and which meaning we give to our actions. We're trying to, if we are asked to explain, what did you do yesterday? How did you talk with your friend? Oh, she told me that she, and she's starting a story. Starting a story, giving her action a meaning, because she's just telling part of what she did. And the dynamic of storytelling, therefore, would reflect changes in the values and how society is developing. And this is what is interesting for us, because we would like to have a forecast of what the developments of society are tomorrow and how a company can react and change according to these developments, or even build new developments that the society until now didn't even perceive as a possibility of how to change.
So last very few charts, and I want to come back to business now. How can business profit from our research And what we both already said is that narratives might be, and we hope we find evidence for this, a subject for early recognition, approaches, and we want to find out if it's possible to implement narratives into innovation systematics in organization. And the question is, can the narratives, the dynamics of narratives in the society be interpreted in the spirit and towards an organizational or entrepreneurial innovation? And the guiding questions here are, how can innovation needs and opportunities be derived from the narrative? So first is the narrative, and now we have to find some mechanism to derive the innovation needs and opportunities from that. And then the second question is, what are the suitable sources and objects of analysis? So are there, what are the societal or public narratives? What are the industry narratives in different industries? What are, for example, corporate narratives, like we heard from Welde, or the leaders' narratives, the stories the leaders tell in the organization? Or what do the stakeholders, so the employees, the customers, the business partners, what do their narratives express in sense of innovation? And again, the question, how can we do this into innovation systematics? This is, for example, such an innovation systematics, PTAP, and this is a milestone process, and you have several milestones. And the idea, for example, to have some typical project template here, how to implement narrative research into an innovation process here. Okay, and what might be the vision? And here I quote Bruce Sterling again: "We have kidnapped the spirit of the times. We are manufacturing reality."